Hello and welcome to today's show. And well, it is a beautiful day here in Brisbane today. So the 9th of December and the temperature is 25 degrees and looking out the window is just sunny as beautiful as it can get. So it is wonderful. And you know, if you look at it, even though it's 25 degrees, it is still got a little bit of chill factor. You don't feel humid or oppressive like that. So, you know, it is a good feeling. Hey, don't forget that tonight is the QMC annual dinner. Yes, and of course, that is on tonight, and it's a sold-out event. So, you know, well done, ST and the team. Looking forward to welcoming you all there tonight. It is wonderful to see that in the name of multiculturalism, everyone is coming together to attend our end-of-year final dinner. So it is going to be a wonderful function. Well, right now, let's go and look at some of the news that's happening today. So in this segment, we will have the news update. We will have the Daily India report, the functions and events that are taking place. And then at 10 a.m., Tanvi Goyal will be joining us right here in these studios to bring to you the latest in travel updates courtesy of Oz India Travel. But right now, let's get into the news. Well, the doctors and nurses, they're doing such a wonderful job. But, you know, when you look at out in the country, they sometimes are a bit reluctant to go there. So the government's trying to put in some incentives for them. Here's that report.
When Sophie Keane finishes her studies next year, she'd love to delve into rural medicine.
Rural medicine is fantastic. I think you get to be a part of a community that is completely different from practicing in the city.
So she welcomes this initiative to incentivise graduates who want to become GPs, rural generalists or nurse practitioners to move to rural or regional areas.
I think a lot of past government programs have been very punitive and punished people by sending them rural, which sends a really bad message about what rural medicine is.
The federal government's pitch is simple.
Go rural and get your HECS debt paid.
From January, it'll wipe the university debt of doctors or nurse practitioners who work at least 24 hours a week outside metro areas. If they do that in a remote community, they must commit to a period equivalent to half the length of their degree, typically 2 or 3 years. Those who instead choose rural or regional areas need to stay for the entire length of their degree.
We want them to choose general practice, and in particular, to get this benefit, we want them to stay and live rural.
The Rural Doctors Association welcomes the announcement but says other supports are also needed.
What we need to make sure we're doing in the very early years immediately after university is ensuring these doctors are given that opportunity to have a taste of rural medicine and rural practice.
While the federal government will be hoping this program succeeds where others haven't, students say a great next step would be to expand it to include other specialties like paediatrics. Penny Timms.
That would be wonderful. You know, of course, what gets incentivized gets done many times. Yeah, of course, why would otherwise people do that? So the incentives could be in many different forms. And in this form, by paying off the university debt, that's quite a good thing because many of the students, you know, they say they've done their studies, but it's cost them a lot. And they all, you know, spend a lot of time trying to pay off that debt. So if that's gone, you are, you know, you got your degree, you are saving the community, and your debt, your school debt, your university debt is paid off. What a great incentive. Of course, incentives can be in many forms. As I've mentioned, it could also be in forms of better wages, other kinds of subsidies for housings and other things like that. That's the only way people would go the remote or rural. These days, living in Australia, I mean, you're a bit away from the lot of hustle bustle, but, you know, you can't say that the, you know, area are really remote because everything's available. It might be a little bit, it might take a little bit longer for some things to get there, but, you know, it's all this good. All the same food chain and everything is available everywhere. But it's just the lifestyle, you know, living in a little bit more relaxed manner rather than all the hustle bustle with everyone trying to run each and everyone over. Well, right now, our next news. Have you heard of the Babar Black Sheep? Well, here's this report.
They say black never goes out of style, but black sheep have never had much of a role in Australia's multi-billion-dollar wool industry. That is until recently. The one-time outcasts of the flock are suddenly hot property, thanks to burgeoning interest in natural products here and overseas.
Demand far outstrips supply. At the moment, it's been incredible, the response, especially from North America.
Sophie and Tom Holt run nearly 30,000 sheep at Coonong Station in the Riverina. Sophie has started a separate black merino flock and processes their wool in Australia, running a wool retail business with two friends. Maggie Lahore worked here as a station hand before returning home to Argentina. And Kimmy Falls runs a local trucking company.
3 working mothers that had 3 good friends that had an idea to process coloured and white wool domestically.
Early on, they were told it couldn't be done.
And the reaction was not great from a lot of mills to someone ringing up and saying, hey, I'd like to process some of my clip, the whole way through in Australia.
With their $500 black wool blankets selling out, they've now proven there's a market.
Coloured sheep are building up a reputation for the quality of their wool, which has been a really big focus in our breeding programs. And consumers are certainly looking for a range of naturally coloured fleeces.
When shearing time comes, the coloured sheep have to be shorn separately so dark fibres don't get into the white wool. The whole shed has to be cleaned down thoroughly to avoid any crossover.
It's hugely important that we don't contaminate our white wool flock, and there's not that there's anything wrong with black wool, but it's a different market and we need to keep them separate.
But it seems the black sheep is no longer the odd one out. Olivia Carver, ABC News, Urana.
There you go. Baba Black Sheep is now trending and trendy. Good on them. You know, there is always a niche market for, products. If they're marketed right and done properly, good on you ladies for having, taken that initiative and getting, thinking outside the square and going and doing what everyone else would not do. Well, right now, the landfills that we have always talked about, some of them are very deadly, loose landfill, and they have asbestos. Here's the report.
It was marketed as a house with old Canberra charm. Cracked walls and rundown interiors were transformed by new owner and builder Dean Pappas and his team over 7 weeks.
This was our forever after home. We were pinching ourselves for weeks after buying it.
After the renovation, he moved in with his pregnant wife and 2-year-old. It wasn't until an electrician went deep into the ceiling cavity to install a bathroom fan that Mr. Fluffy fibres were found under bats.
They sent me a photo of what they found, and as soon as that happened, my heart just sunk. I knew there and then it wasn't looking good.
The confirmation came the same day Canberra went into lockdown.
I know my trades have been exposed. I was in the ceiling cavity at one point. We replaced a number of downlights and all the fibres I still remember at the time were falling in my hair and in my face.
The house was missed by the original removal program in the 1990s. It's the 6th additional property found since the ACT government published its register of affected homes in 2015.
There is a possibility that there are still properties out there that may have Mr. Fluffy insulation, and if people are concerned, they should get an asbestos assessor to inspect the property.
Regular building inspections don't pick up Mr. Fluffy, which is why a full asbestos assessment is needed. In 2014, the task force recommended they be mandatory for the sale of older homes. The proposal was rejected at the time and rejected again by the minister this year.
The current settings have served us really well. We have identified a very small number of properties since that time.
I think it's a no-brainer. It's not going to cost the government any money to do this. It's a cost that will go on to sellers or buyers.
The Reed house will be demolished under the government's buyback scheme, and the Pappas family has decided to rebuild.
We're going to put our heart and soul into it, and we're going to try and do justice for this area and for this house as well.
Soon to be gone, but not forgotten. Susan McDonald, ABC.
Well, of course, we know that with those asbestos, there are many properties which might have them. and they are deadly, Mr. Fluffy, as it came out. So when new products come out on the market, many times, they do get the seal of approval, and they are widely used until things are discovered. That goes for anything, any new technology, and anything that meddles or changes with nature. So, if you do that, you will have to face the consequences today or tomorrow or some other day. But if you change the course of nature, you will face some consequences. There will be some reaction, as they say. To every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. Well, moving on to the next report, which is about the UGG boots. And our Australian manufacturer is challenging or has lost the battle with the US giants.
Eddie Euger knows a thing or two about UGG boots. Now his life's work and his company are in tatters.
I'm a little bit shocked still.
He owes $5 million in legal fees after losing his final bid to appeal to the US Supreme Court. American shoe giant Deckers successfully sued him for selling Uggs in the US, where they hold the trademark.
And for selling 13 pairs in 5 years into the United States, online, mind you, it's a .com.au site.
A former director at Australia's consumer watchdog worked as his lawyer.
When Eddie got sued, he was willing to take them on to fight the case all the way, and he did that because he knew that if we won, it could open up the global market to Australian UGG boot manufacturers, creating thousands of jobs.
A lot of people think that Deckers shouldn't have been able to register UGG in the US because it's an Australian icon, but because it's not known as an American icon, it was perfectly legitimate.
For 30 years, Eddie and his staff have been making Uggs at this warehouse in Lidcombe. But with all legal avenues exhausted, they're facing bankruptcy and shutting down these machines for good. He's already had to lay off many employees, but is determined not to give up.
Looks like we just have to get up and restart again.
Eddie says he can't imagine ever having another job. Amy Greenbank, ABC News, Sydney.
Well, legal cost and legal battle for selling 13 pairs of UGG boots to the American market via our online channel through our website, which is .iu. Even then, he's lost the battle. Well, such is the legal cases, and of course, trademarks, copyrights, and other things are not always or 100%. Policed, as was said by the consumer price, but when it does, and if someone's prepared to go the full length and the challenge, there could be a very, very costly affair as well. Well, right now, the next report, today we're not touching too much on the pandemic. Everyone knows what's happening out there. Today, let's look at the Australian fatality rates.
Nearly 4%, so 3.7 to be precise. It's something that I was expecting. Certainly, the projections that have been done and published by the Population Centre in Treasury certainly also supports those expectations. But the moment the COVID pandemic hit the world, many were suggesting, well, we're in for a baby boom. What else are people going to be doing, right? Except for getting busy in the bedroom. But of course, as demographers, we know that it takes a hell of a lot more than sex for a baby boom to happen. And if we look to these figures, we certainly see something quite stark here. And that is that even prior to the pandemic, we saw long-term, 50 years worth of below replacement fertility. Now, that has a massive strain on our population and in particular our workforce age distribution. And that's why we have so much immigration in Australia, is we need that to offset the local population. But what's so stark in these figures is that the moment COVID hit early on in 2020, people made very swift decisions around having a child or having subsequent children. And we can see that in the data released by the Bureau of Statistics. And it kind of spells a big worry for me, because outside of COVID, we're already grappling with what I would consider the the top 4 policy issues when it comes to procreation. Let's go through them. Housing affordability, no surprise there. Insecure work, gender inequality, and of course climate change. These are the things that, coupled with the uncertainty of the pandemic, has really struck a chord with young people and in particular prospective parents. And I really worry about the future.
Liz, we've had overwhelming numbers of people writing in and saying all those things you just mentioned there are pressures on the planet itself. So what is the big deal if we actually have less people? Isn't that a good thing?
You know what, I certainly agree. Climate change is a massive issue, a massive pressing issue, and young people say it's a key issue in them just making decisions around having family. The difficulty here, though, is that if we look to other data, people do want to have children. They're not realising their intended fertility in demography speak. And that spells a bit of a shame on an individual level. We're missing children here. And that puts pressure on our economy. And I'm not reducing people to dollar signs here at all. I'm asking you to consider the future of Australia and what does that look like. And babies are a feature there. And so we need to consider what we need to do to help support people having babies. And that's the people that want to have babies in Australia. We have this kind of perverse policy situation where it's not all that easy to have children. And certainly I want to see policy and leadership around these 4 core issues. We can ameliorate climate change by putting in smart policies to drive down the climate changing issues that we kind of, as humans, put out there in the universe. These are the things we should be redressing.
Liz Allen, you, as always, know how to make it very understandable for all of us. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, and she did explain that quite well. And of course, there's quite a few debates in there. Number one is the population and the growth. Once again, I go back to what I originally said about meddling with nature. Nature heads its own way. We can't just put on say that in this planet we can only have this many people, so everyone should start family planning or things like that. So we're talking about nature and the things that happen naturally. So and of course, the other pressures that's been put on about the climate change, another debate where we are to be blamed to a degree, but also there are so many things that would happen naturally. The world has evolved. It's evolved from the time it began, whenever that might have been, from time eternity. So we've gone through many different ages, the dinosaur ages, and of course the volcanoes were active. So all those things have slowly subsided. Things have changed. Things are beyond our control. The pollution and those kind of things is human. That's man-made. That's from what we have done. But there is always a certain degree of changes that have happened which are natural, which are the rules of evolution of the world to the day today, the way it is, and how it has been transformed over the years with natural phenomena as well. So, childbirth is another natural phenomenon. So, once again, that, and of course, the right to terminate someone's life when they're not feeling well. Of course, that again is another matter, which is where we are meddling up with the natural causes. Our human right should be to try and protect the lives for as long as we can. Life and death is a matter for him. From a power beyond us. Our role is duty. So duty is what's in our hand. We try and do the best. And when something's going to happen, it will happen. But as the teaching of Gita, which is now finally widely accepted, is that our role is in the duty. The results he will provide. So right now it's time to go to our daily India report, and with that, let's welcome Ankita.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India and the growing engagement of the Indian diaspora with India. In our first story, farm issue protesters hint at calling off their agitation as the Modi government accepts most demands. Indian farmer unions protesting against the repeal of the 3 farm laws have hinted that they are likely to call off the year-long protest as a consensus has reportedly been reached among protester groups, induced by certain assurances given by the Modi government. A final decision in this regard is likely on December 8th. In the letter through the Union Home Ministry, the Modi government said it was willing to accept the major demands of the farmers' unions, provided they end their protests and return home. Though SKM said it would not accept any conditions to end its agitation, the two sides appeared closing to clinching a deal. Farm leaders who took part in the meeting on December 7th said SKM appreciated the government move, but that there were still some sticking points and discussions will resume on December 8th. After nearly 14 months of protests on highways by farmers, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on November 19th announced that his government would withdraw 3 agricultural reform laws that farmers found disastrous for their livelihood. The laws were repealed by Parliament on November 29th. Among the key demands of the farm unions is legislation guaranteeing minimum prices for their farm produce. The centre's letter proposed a committee on minimum support prices or MSP comprising central and state government officials, farmers' representatives including members of SKM and agricultural scientists. SKM on December 4th named 5 members to negotiate with the government to resolve pending demands of farmers. The panel consists of farm leaders Ashok Dhavle, Balbir Singh Rajeval, Gurnam Singh Chaduni, Shiv Kumar Kakkaji and Yudhvir Singh. One of the other principal demands of the agitating farmers is that all cases registered against protesters in various states be withdrawn unconditionally. In its proposal sent to SKM, the centre said the BJP-ruled governments of Haryana and Uttar Pradesh have agreed to their demand as soon as the farmers announced an end to their movement. The centre further said that it would hold talks with all stakeholders before moving the Electricity Amendment Bill 2020 in Parliament. The government has listed the bill to be taken up in the current session of Parliament. Farmers want the bill withdrawn as they think it contains provisions that will increase the cost of agricultural power supply. The union government also agreed to end all criminal liability of farmers for burning crop residue contained in law to curb pollution in the national capital region. India develops AESA radar to make IAF fighters more lethal. Soon, Indian Air Force will demonstrate the use of an indigenously developed active electronically scanned array radar, making India one of the few countries to have an indigenous force multiplier that lies at the heart of electronic warfare, long-range missiles and long-distance, precision-guided ammunition. Project Director D. Seshagiri of Electronics and Radar Development Establishment confirmed this and said that the developed AESA radar is 95% indigenous with only one imported subsystem. It has the capacity to track 50 targets in the sky at a range in excess of 100 kilometers and engage 4 of them simultaneously. In the next 5 years, all 83 of IAF's Tejas Mark 1A fighters will have this radar, as will the future twin-engine AMCA fighter developed by the Aeronautical Development Agency. The AESA radar is also the key to the DRDO-developed Astra air-to-air missile, which has a range well over 120 kilometers and will deliver guided ammunition over long distances. This radar will nullify the air superiority China had gained with its J-20 multi-role fighters, as the Indian-developed AESA radar compares well with the one developed by Beijing. The AESA radar will be mounted on the radar cone of Su-30 MKI aircraft as well as carrier-based MiG-29K fighters of the Indian military. The first 16 Tejas Mk-1A aircraft will be fitted with Israeli ELM-2052 AESA radars, and the remaining will be fitted with the indigenous Uttam AESA radar. The National Flight Testing Center, which is manned by IAF, has already green-lighted the radar after successful performance tests. Earlier, India was using primary radars on its fighters as well as indigenous airborne warning and control systems panels. The Pakistani Air Force's retaliation for the Balakot strike in February 2019 would have turned costly for Islamabad if Indian fighters had AESA radars mounted on intercepting fighters. India unseats Brazil to become top food supplier to Arab nations after 15 years. India surpassed Brazil in food exports to the League of Arab States for the first time in 15 years as the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted trade flows in 2020. The Arab world is among Brazil's most important trade partners, but its distance from those markets took its toll as the pandemic rattled global logistics. Brazil accounted for 8.15% of the total agri-business products imported by the 22 league members last year, whereas India captured 8.25% of that trade, ending Brazil's 15-year advantage. Despite remaining competitive from the farm gate in, Brazil lost ground to India and other exporters such as Turkey, the United States, France and Argentina amid a disruption of traditional shipping routes. Brazilian shipments to Saudi Arabia that once took 30 days could now reach 60 days according to the chamber. But India's geographic advantages allow it to ship fruits, vegetables, sugar, grains and meat in as little as a week. Brazil's agricultural exports to the Arab League rose just 1.4% by value to $8.17 billion last year. Between January and October this year, sales totaled $6.78 billion, up 5.5% as logistics problems subsided, chamber data showed. China's push to boost its own food inventories during the pandemic also diverted some of Brazil's trade with the Arabs, leading countries such as Saudi Arabia to step up the promotion of domestic food production while seeking alternative suppliers. Former Obama administration official says India-US Trade Policy Forum plays a key role in deepening understanding of each other's positions. A former top commerce official in the Obama administration who welcomed the revival of the key platform to further enhance bilateral trade ties said the India-US Trade Policy Forum has a key role to play in deepening the understanding of each other's positions in a non-negotiating, non-transaction-oriented setting. During her maiden visit to India last month, United States Trade Representative Katherine Tai had her first Trade Policy Forum meeting with Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. The meeting was held after a gap of 4 years. Arun Kumar, who is at the end of his 5-year term as Chairman and CEO of KPMG India, an assignment he took on after completing his tenure as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Global Markets and Director General of the US and Foreign Commercial Service in the Obama administration, said it was important that face-to-face ministerial level conversations were held between the two governments. Kumar, who was in Washington, D.C. on a personal visit, said an important aspect of the talks this time was that it recognized the importance of labor and environmental standards. Responding to a question on the 11th month of the Biden administration, Kumar said the good news is that trade and commerce between the US and India continue to grow. The US is India's largest trade partner today. Foreign direct investment from the US into India has been robust and growing. On the government-to-government front, talk of a mini-deal receded even as the Biden administration was expectedly focused on domestic priorities. According to Kumar, there are several areas of contention ranging from GSP to issues related to digital trade and data. GSP is the largest and oldest US trade preference program which promotes economic development by eliminating duties on thousands of products when imported from one of 119 designated beneficiary countries and territories. International passengers coming to India are mandated to file a self-declaration form on Air Suvidha portal. For ensuring the smooth passage of international travellers arriving in India, the Indian government has mandated contactless self-declaration by them on the Air Suvidha portal. The portal was launched in August 2020 and is used to ease international passenger arrival in India. The portal aids passengers in providing their details of travel and final stay along with RT-PCR and vaccination status among other details. In today's time, this helps the state officials in contact tracing. The implementation of the Air Suvidha portal intends to provide hassle-free, queue-free and convenient air travel to all international passengers arriving in India. To ensure the necessary prevention...
It is 680 days since COVID first arrived here in Queensland, since we first declared a public health emergency. And achieving that target, that 80% target, means we can open our borders finally on Monday at 1 a.m. and we can reward the 80% of us who are double vaccinated with those freedoms that we have outlined, the ability to go out, enjoy ourselves at Christmas without any of the restrictions that we've become accustomed to over the last 680 days. It's still a little bit patchy across the state, and so we have a message for some regions, especially the Gold Coast, where we would expect to see COVID cases first. On the Gold Coast, they're still sitting at 76.5% vaccinated, and between now and coming weeks, we really need to see more Gold Coasters come forward and get both of their vaccinations. I want to thank and congratulate and give credit to the health workers of our state, the pharmacists, the GPs, of course all of the fantastic staff of Queensland Health, everyone who has been involved in this vaccine rollout. It is an incredible result. We can also announce today that it's a double donut day. No cases of COVID in the community or in quarantine. And while of course that's worth celebrating, that's an incredible result, it might be one of our last. From next week, we should expect to start seeing COVID cases, and we should have confidence that our high vaccination rate, as well as our ongoing public health measures, will keep people safe and will ensure that our hospitals can treat those people who get COVID and need treatment. Of course, we want to keep it up. We want to keep going. We want Queenslanders to keep getting vaccinated. We want to surpass that 90% target. And, of course, we want people to go and get their boosters as they're required. Where else would you want to celebrate that kind of milestone than here in this warehouse that will eventually be the manufacturing facility for Vaxxus? Wouldn't it be fantastic if next time we need to vaccinate our whole population really quickly, we could vaccinate them using a platform, a technology developed in Queensland and manufactured here in Queensland, right here at Hamilton North Shore. We're converting this warehouse into a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. There's 80 jobs in construction, but once it's up and running, there will be between 110 and 140 highly skilled Queenslanders working here at Vaxxus, creating a vaccine technology that is quick and needle-free. It will be easier to transport. It will be able to deliver a wide variety of different vaccines without the level of skill currently required to deliver the syringe vaccines that we've all gone and got this year. Who knows how many of those people who aren't yet vaccinated is because of their fear of vaccines and syringes, and this delivery technology will of course be much more convenient, much more suitable for those folk. Once it's up and running,
hopefully,
yes,
that will be the one.
The exemption
and right
forms
here
in
we
the
go
Air
back to
Suvidha
Delhi India
portal have
report.
been discontinued, and filling of the details have been made compulsory for all international passengers arriving in India. Now, all international passengers arriving in India are mandated to declare their current health status prior to boarding on the Air Suvidha portal along with the required documents. For immigration, the copy received in email is essential on arrival in India and has to be verified at the APHO counter. According to the ministry, all applications from at-risk countries are marked with H and red band, while others are marked green. This helps in smooth on-arrival segregation and processing. The application also takes into account countries visited in the last 14 days to highlight at-risk applications. This field has also been made into a multi-select drop-down option for standardization. For at-risk countries, passengers are advised to pre-book their test on arrival, and the links to the respective testing facilities are provided to the passengers on SDF submission. Jail team releases BTS video of hit number Nagarodi. The makers of director Vasant Balan's much-awaited Jail have released a behind-the-scenes video of the Fury hit number Nagarodi, which has garnered over 1.5 million views on YouTube. The song, which speaks about poor people who are pushed to the outskirts of the city they have helped build, has been penned by lyricist Arivu and had helped trigger interest in the film. The video shows dance choreographer Sandy explaining dance moves to music director G.V. Prakash, lyricist Arivu, and singer Ananya Bhatt. The film, which is all set to release on December 9th, has actor music director G.V. Prakash playing the lead along with Aparnathi. Apart from Prakash, the film also features Radhika Sarath Kumar, Pasanga Pandi, and Nadan Ram in vital roles.
Camera, rolling, from.
That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much for the daily report, Ankita. Right now it's time to go to our functions and events taking place here. And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment. Don't forget that at 10 a.m. we're coming back with the weekly travel updates with Tanvi Goyal of Oz India Travels. Until then, it's goodbye from us.